Continuing with the amazing OutRun, Sega released a sequel which in hindsight was inevitable. The original was an instant arcade hit which many people of my age and older have fond memories of. So what could Sega do to differentiate it? Let's make this ultra fancy and call it Turbo OutRun. Just like the original, Turbo OutRun gives you a Ferrari but a new model to move with the times. The same idea pretty much, with a couple of extra features including an opponent who drives a Porsche, and you can also add upgrades to with Turbo OutRun. I don't personally recall this game being in any arcade I went to as a kid, but do know of its massive popularity. Just a bit of info before I start this video: the Commodore Plus 4 actually had an amazing port of this at the beginning of this year, 2024. I will leave this link in the description so you can check it out and get blown away by this version. Anyways, by popular request, let's rank from worst to best of Turbo OutRun ports. We are kicking off the worst Turbo OutRun home conversion release with this Amstrad CPC game. Alongside different platforms in this video, a few struggle mainly with one irritating issue. It is the size of the Ferrari that you are controlling. It really is just far too big for its own good, and it's very difficult to see what's happening in the road in front of you, and this only gets worse when turning corners with this Amstrad port, where instead of giving the car an angle to see what is happening and where to stop braking, the annoyance of the car continues obscuring more of the road in front of you, making it very difficult to judge what's around. Using boost really feels like you are not going any faster. The Amstrad version is very slow paced, very laggy that is, and lacks a sense of speed. No sound effects with this version, and the controlling isn't best either. The 1990 ZX Spectrum version is a tough play. I wouldn't necessarily that it was shockingly bad, but did seem like a downgrade from the original OutRun game for the ZX Spectrum. The main issue is with this port is, again, the size of the car, just like the Amstrad version. It is just far too big to see incoming cars. The depth of the road is also hard to judge here too, as you can only see so much of it. For Spectrum colours, it's not actually that bad. I have certainly seen much worse. Controller wise, this game responds fairly nicely with smooth steering. In terms of speed itself and using boosts, it just doesn't give the player much sense of a wow factor, as in you're speeding like lightning with this version. The music is however superb with this release. If it wasn't for the size of the car, or maybe if the angle of the car and track was adjusted, this, just like the Amstrad version, could have been so much better. Next up, we have got the Atari ST port. You are likely thinking this game looks pretty good. Its colours are fairly vibrant and the music and sound effects aren't bad too. This is sadly where it ends though. Controlling just seems stiff and its frame rates are fairly poor here too. I found myself crashing a hell of a lot with this conversion due to laggy frames, like I've said, and fairly bad controls too. It's a real shame that the Atari ST ended up with this, as some will likely consider it as a half-finished game. Likely time constraints, and as we know that in those days publishers wouldn't really give much of a care in the world if the final product was this bad and your publishing name happened to be US Gold. To be honest with you, the Commodore Amiga version isn't too much better than the ST conversion. It looks slightly nicer than the ST port and also seems a tiny little bit more responsive, but it still isn't really much fun to play. The issue with the conversion is partly the size of other cars, which make you crash and are very hard to take over other cars whilst you're racing. The music quality is a notable step up from the Atari ST port, but really it just lacks what Turbo OutRun is, that sense of speed and good precision when turning corners. Another half-baked port by US Gold. Although the IBM PC compatible DOS port is actually playable and doesn't particularly suffer with frame issues like the previous versions we've looked at, there isn't really much speed involved with this version. It's fairly slow in that the Ferrari is performing like an old school Skoda. It's just very boring to play, and even with the speed boost it's just far too slow. The dashboard on the bottom of the screen really takes away that arcade feel about it, which is trying to imitate. Not particularly a high octane racer at all. I think one of the worst things with the DOS port is that we have no music, just some sound effects, but to be fair, these actually aren't too bad for a DOS game of this era. The Commodore 64 pretty much nailed it as far as 8-bit computers are concerned here. Notably, we have full screen as well as full colour, a nice soundtrack by the awesome Jerome Tell being powered by the best sound chip of that era, which is of course the SID chip. We also have a nice field of view with the C64's conversion, where we can see the road a little bit better through its perspective, rather than being obscured by a car which is clearly too big for its own good. The C64's car sprite size is adequate too here. In terms of controlling, this turns left and right just like butter spreading, and boosts actually feel like you're boosting for a reason here. The sense of speed is definitely here with the Commodore 64's conversion, although maybe a little too fast when braking corners. The Sega Mega Drive's 1992 release is a very fast and responsive conversion. Although not quite arcade perfection in terms of how it looks, the sense of speed and distance depth is pretty nicely implemented here. It is nice and colourful, and taking corners and using boosts all feel very nicely done too. Music wise, it's very nice, and it's of course very Sega Mega Drive or Sega Genesis sounding, which just comes with that territory. The road ahead is nice to see here, where many other versions spelled with this. The Ferrari you are driving is also a decent size too. Overall, a very good Mega Drive Turbo OutRun conversion, but, and surprisingly, it was developed by the infamous Teratex. If you've seen some of the shoddy work they have done outside of this conversion, you'll note here why I actually said infamous. The next conversion in this video nails it even better than this version though. And in first place we have the 1989 FM Towns conversion, easily winning this war between the ports. In terms of looking very similar to the source material, although it does miss objects and buildings on the sides of the road, this conversion plays very similar and even has an enhanced sound to the game too. I found that as great of a port the Mega Drive had, the FM Towns colours just seemed that much nicer, and controlling just seemed a little bit more refined than the Mega Drive version. A nice pace with this version indeed, and it wasn't designed to make you crash over and over again like some versions did for this arcade game. I really do think that this version is very likely the next best thing you would have had outside the arcade game back in the day. And that's it for today's Ranking Turbo OutRun ports. So did you agree with my FM Towns decision being in first place, or would you have rather had the IBM PC compatible version in first place? Which platform did you play this game on in a day? Let us know as always in the comments below, and until next time, thanks for watching.